Jacksonville, the quaint maritime town where North Carolina meets the sea, greeted David Tremaine with a light summer breeze, laden with the scent of salt and promises. He was far from the towering glass behemoths of New York, traded for the low sprawl of clapboard houses, modest churches, and the distant sight of fishing boats pirouetting on the intracoastal waterway. The pastiche of steeples and masts gave the skyline a unique rhythm, a sea shanty in concrete and wood, but a melody that could not quite soothe his old restless fears. David Tremaine, former NYPD detective, veteran, survivor, still felt the vertigo, that phantom sensation of height, even here where the tallest structures were pines reaching for the sky. His heart beat the rhythm of an old trauma, a scar that ran deeper than the darkest abyss, a fear of heights that clung to him like a second shadow. His new career as a private investigator kept him mostly grounded, where he preferred, and it was here, among the living, he found himself tied to the dead. The identity thefts plaguing Jacksonville had one thing in common. They were all recently deceased, a morbid connection that put the local graveyard at the heart of the mystery. The graveyard, the city's quiet sentinel, loomed at the edge of town, a collection of stone and memory. It was in his line of sight as he entered the local sheriff's office, a weathered building that carried the scent of old paper and the faintest whiff of gun oil. "Sheriff Barnes," Tremaine greeted, his voice a gravelly echo of the city's murmuring waves. "David," Barnes replied, his creased face split by a familiar grin. "Still chasing shadows?" "Just when I think I'm done, they pull me back in," Tremaine replied, the edges of his mouth curling upwards. They delved into the case, the stark crime reports contrasting against the room's rustic charm. As Tremaine listened, he found himself drawn back to the graveyard, a tableau of calm that hid the whispers of the dead. In the silence between shared words and pages turned, he could almost hear its call. The day waned into a watercolor sunset as he left the sheriff's office. As he walked home, he passed the houses shrouded in the hush of evening, each window a glowing vignette of domestic life, a testament to the loved ones who gave his resolve steel. The memory of a betrayer was a bitter pill, but the thought of protection, of safeguarding, was a soothing balm. That night he stared out of his window, his gaze falling on the distant silhouette of the graveyard. The lines between the living and the dead blurred, the town and its cemetery tied together in an eerie dance. A dance he would soon join. The comforting sea shanty of Jacksonville was discordant, underscored by an uncanny fog that seemed to favor the graveyard, cloaking it in a shroud of mystery. The pull of the case was strong, but the ominous draw of the cemetery was stronger still. Its stone pillars and shadowed walkways were gateways to a world he had yet to understand, a song yet to be sung. Tomorrow, he decided, he would venture into the heart of the cemetery, and so the stage was set, the first threads of a cosmic mystery entwining with his life. As the whispers of the city lulled him to sleep, he was unaware that the symphony of the coming horror was just beginning to play its opening notes. The dawn found Jacksonville basking in a sun-dappled glow. Tremaine awoke to the lullaby of waves lapping against the sandy shore and the crisp chatter of the seagulls. Today, the town revealed a different face. The spectral fog that shrouded the cemetery had lifted, yet a ghostly essence clung to the air. The town looked the same, its heart still beat with the gentle rhythm of the sea, but a new undertone prickled at the edges of his consciousness. Within this tapestry of the familiar and the uncanny, he knew he wouldn't traverse this labyrinth alone. His ally in this investigation was a study in contrast, Mark Durbin. Mark was half Tremaine's age, a digital maestro, his fingers dancing across keyboards as if they were piano keys, creating symphonies in data streams. Mark was a different kind of brave. He attacked algorithms with the same gusto that Tremaine had once chased street toughs down New York's foggy alleyways. The young man's constant stream of chatter, his tireless enthusiasm, and his devil-may-care grin had warmed the corners of Tremaine's heart. He saw in him the innocence of trust, an innocence he guarded fiercely. The day passed in the shared silence of work, the hum of computers punctuated by Mark's muttered half-curses and the soft ticking of the wall clock. The graveyard, in its paradoxical silence, felt less menacing under the bright sun, and yet a part of Tremaine could not dismiss the shadows he'd perceived last night. He shared his concerns with Mark in the heavy dusk, the room bathed in the glow of their computer screens. "Something doesn't feel right," he admitted, his gaze distant. Mark turned to him, eyebrows furrowed. "You mean about the graveyard?" "Yes, it's almost like the town and the cemetery are in sync, breathing together. I can't shake the feeling off." Mark laughed, a light sound in the growing darkness. "You're getting poetic in your old age, David. We've just got a thief with a flair for the dramatic." But the light in his eyes didn't quite reach the depths, and Tremaine saw a shadow pass across his face. A shared suspicion, unspoken yet understood. The town and its graveyard were weaving an enigmatic tale, one they were yet to decipher. By the time Tremaine retired for the night, the dissonance between the charming seaside town and the eeriness of the cemetery had grown. The graveyard's silhouette under the moonlight felt more haunting, its stones casting long, dark shadows that seemed to creep towards the town. The whispering winds carried tales of ghostly figures, and the rustling leaves spoke of unseen watchers. Jacksonville had always been a town that lived alongside its past, but as the second day closed, it seemed as though the past was beginning to encroach upon the present. As the threads of the day spun into the tapestry of the night, the story of the city and its cemetery continued to unfurl. And somewhere in this vast narrative, he knew that something ominous was waiting to emerge from the shadows. A languid dawn spilled over Jacksonville, painting the town in hues of languor. But beneath the comforting serenade of the sea and the sleepy chirping of birds, something had shifted. The town felt heavier, like an unseen weight had settled over the clapboard houses, the quiet streets, and the silent graveyard. The marrow of the town was singing a dirge, an elegy for innocence lost. Tremaine greeted the day with apprehension, a subtle tension coiled around his heart. Mark, usually an early riser, was missing. His seat, usually chaotic with coffee-stained blueprints of data trails and scrawled notes, lay empty, the screens dark. In the unsettling quiet, he found a new lead, a crumpled paper hidden under a discarded mug. It was a coded message, a digital riddle that bore Mark's unmistakable signature. His hitched as the truth dawned on him, a cruel twist of fate casting long shadows over his heart. Mark was the culprit behind the grave thefts. The world tilted on its axis, a dark chasm opening beneath him. His fear of heights, the phantom of verticality, roared back to life. Yet he stood his ground. For beneath the deceit, the code told another tale. A plea for help, a warning. The undertow of the narrative pulled him toward the heart of the conspiracy, the graveyard. In the cold light of the afternoon, the cemetery bore a silent testimony to the lives lived and lost. Braving the echoing silence, he found himself standing before a towering mausoleum, its ancient stone bearing the weight of centuries. It was here that Mark was hiding, a creature of shadows ensnared by a darker force. Their confrontation was an echo of their friendship, a mix of bitterness and camaraderie, a brewing storm of accusation and confession. Mark, haunted and remorseful, told his tale of manipulation, an ancient cosmic entity tied to the cemetery, compelling him to conduct the thefts. His voice trembled as he revealed the entity's incomprehensible nature, its formlessness, its terrifying vastness, a dread that turned the celestial sphere into a predatory beast. The cemetery, the quiet sentinel, had become the mouth of a monstrous entity, swallowing the identities of the dead, blurring the lines between life and death, reality and nightmare. The very earth beneath them was a puppet on cosmic strings, controlled by a creature that existed beyond the edges of human understanding. The revelation was a labyrinth of terror, yet Tremaine found himself surprisingly calm. His fear of heights, a demon he had wrestled all his life, served as a bulwark against this cosmic vertigo. He was no stranger to terror, no novice to the dance with fear. As the sun set, staining the sky with the shades of dread, he made his decision. He would not run from this abomination. He would sever the ties that bound Mark to the entity and stop the town from spiraling into the gaping maw of cosmic horror. The graveyard, once a symbol of respite and remembrance, had become the epicenter of a terrifying reality. Beneath the gravestones, the cosmic entity stirred, waiting for the final act to unfold. As he left the cemetery, the weight of the coming confrontation settled in his heart. The stage was set, the players locked in a terrible dance, and the song of the cosmic entity reverberated beneath the quiet town of Jacksonville. The night was an overture to a symphony of horror. A velvet darkness fell over Jacksonville, the stars themselves seeming to retreat from the insidious shadow blanketing the town. The sea sang a dirge, mourning a tranquility lost to the cosmic abyss. Beneath the shroud, Tremaine ventured forth, a knight-errant braving a dragon's lair not of fire, but of the incomprehensible. The graveyard stood as an alien realm, the shadows of the tombstones dancing grotesque waltzes in the moonlight. Every gust of wind was a sigh from the crypts, every rustle of leaves a secret shared among the departed. Tremaine, the outsider, moved through this spectral landscape, his brave heart echoing the town's mournful serenade. Mark was waiting at the heart of this necropolis, his youthful features etched with a fear that aged him. His betrayal sat between them, a specter of the trust that had been. Yet, in the face of the cosmic terror looming over them, their personal turmoil felt trivial, shadows dwarfed by the greater darkness. Tremaine approached him, the gravelly voice that once comforted now resonating with grim resolve. "Mark, we end this. Now." The ritual was as much a mystery as the entity itself, an arcane dance of technology and willpower, where coding skills were weapons and bravery the only shield. They were but ants challenging a star, a futile battle against the cosmic entity that lurked beneath the gravestones, its presence warping reality into a nightmarish tapestry. The hours bled into each other, every second stretching into eternity. Mark worked feverishly, his fingers pounding the keyboard, while Tremaine held the spectral realm at bay, his courage staving off the creeping sense of cosmic dread. The town itself seemed to hold its breath, watching its defenders wage their silent war. In the darkest hour before the false promise of dawn, the entity roared to life, an earthquake of reality itself. It was not anger, not malice. It was the callous disregard of a cosmic leviathan to the defiance of its insignificant prey. The world shuddered, the lines between the living and the dead blurring into a chaotic mosaic. Tremaine found himself suspended, not in space, but in fear. It was a height unlike any he'd ever known, an abyssal fall into the depths of cosmic horror. Yet he held on, his will anchoring him in the maelstrom of terror. His fear of heights, once a cruel tormentor, was now his savior, his understanding of vertigo a lifeline in the face of unimaginable dread. As the entity writhed, he delivered the final blow, a symphony of codes that cut through the monster's control, severing its ties with Jacksonville. The quiet town shuddered one last time before silence fell, as sudden and shocking as the entity's emergence. In the aftermath, they found themselves in a graveyard that was once again just a resting place for the dead. The cosmic terror had retreated, not defeated but merely inconvenienced, its malignant influence held at bay. Mark, freed from its clutch, collapsed, his strength leaving him in a rush of relief. Tremaine, standing at the precipice of the cosmic abyss, realized their victory was but an illusion. They had escaped, not vanquished. The cosmic entity was still out there, beneath the gravestones, waiting in the shadows of their triumph. The fear of heights, once a personal dread, was now a shared terror, a cosmic vertigo that would haunt them in the quiet moments of their lives. As dawn finally broke, Jacksonville woke to a new day, its heartbeat back in tune with the rhythm of the sea. Yet its melody had changed, now carrying an undertone of the horror that lurked beneath. Tremaine, survivor and protector, knew their dance with the cosmic entity was not over. It was merely the first step in a terrifying waltz that would continue beneath the gravestones in the heart of Jacksonville. a town forever changed by its brush with the cosmic horrors that lay beyond the veil of reality. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like it and subscribe to our channel where you can find more similar stories, and click on the bell icon to never miss one. There is plenty more cosmic horror to come from the Eldritch Tales Factory. Stay tuned, and until next time.